club.
They all wasn't doing it at the same time.
Walaikum salam. Barakallahu feek, Khalid. Shall I see you tomorrow? Huh? I'm alright. Yeah, no complaints. No complaints. Jazakallah khair.
Inshallah. Question from online. This is MR from Hyderabad, India. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. If I gave debt to someone and that had some impermissible money, will it be permissible for me to use the money when the person repays it?
If you loan someone money and you've loaned them money that involved some haram money, not all of it, but some of it was haram. When a person repays you, is it permissible for you to use the money? As if that's the question. Question comes from Hyderabad, India. There's different ways of looking at this answer. The first way is that what is the percentage of the haram wealth? Do you know how much it is? So let's say you loan someone $1,000, and you know for sure that 300 of it is haram. For sure. You know that for sure. And the person, he pays you back the 1,000, you take the 700, you discard the 300. You take the 700, or you give the 300, just give it away. Not as charity, but get rid of it in a useful way. Takhallus. You just get rid of it. That's one way of looking at it. That's one piece of advice that I would give you. As far as if you don't know what is haram or what was haram, a way of looking at it is the money that was given back to you, was that the same money? Or was it his money? He could have spent the haram wealth and he repaid you with $1,000 of wealth. That's what? Totally halal. That's another way of looking at it. It doesn't necessarily have to be khabith. Alright? Even though the principle is still there. You gave him haram wealth of the 1,000. Alright? Also, the entire 1,000, all of it was haram or just some of it, like I just said. That's going to make a difference on the answer. It's going to make a difference on the answer. Al-Muhim is that if you know how much it is, then get rid of it. Do not burn the money, but get rid of it. Give it away in a way in which someone can benefit from it and it can be useful, but not with the intention of charity, of sadaqah. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla only accepts that which is tayyib. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
This was AA from Miami, Florida. Assalamu alaikum. Can men wear non-gold necklaces?
Question comes from Miami, Florida. Can men wear non-gold necklaces? It depends what type of necklace it is. The necklace could be a knife necklace. The necklace could be tools. The necklace could be something that you may need camping. You have a compass. Al-Muhim. A necklace is a broad terminology, a broad word, a necklace. As far as if you mean jewelry, wearing in jewelry, a chain that's not gold, such as silver or another type of metal, then I wouldn't advise with it. I would not advise with a man wearing a chain, even if it's not gold. As far as something or some type of use, dog tags or something like this, maybe a different story. You don't understand this? But just like a chain, like jewelry, even if it's not gold, I wouldn't advise with it. I don't have the ability to say that it's haram. Okay, some people, they say it's haram, it's imitating a woman. Not necessarily. It's men's jewelry. It's well known for men. And there are many cultures and civilizations in which men have necklaces and jewelry that's made for men. And they're fierce warriors who have a bracelet, right? Or a necklace. So you can't necessarily say that, I wouldn't advise with it, and Allah knows best.
This was AS from Watford, UK. Could you please give advice on joining Pakistani army? May Allah grant you of the highest things in general.
Question comes from Blackford, UK. Watford. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. Please forgive me if it isn't. Could you give some advice on joining the Pakistani army? Like we said before, Allahumma musta'an, yani. The world today, the system of politics under which we live, the Muslims, the Muslim countries, and the Far East and the Middle East, Allahumma musta'an, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. What can you say? What can you do? You go here, you do this. One way or another, yani, the disobedience to Allah and His Messenger has become so widespread. It's very disheartening. It's very disheartening. So I would say that joining any army, it depends on what type of army it is. And it depends on what you're required to do. It depends on what type of army it is and what you're required to do. If it's mandatory, necessary, 2-year service, then that's one thing. If you're going to be in the reserves, then that's one thing. If you're signing up with the ambition and the intention to go far and to do this and to do that, then that's a different story. If you're going joining an army which is well known to be allied with people that are promoting and supporting kufr and shirk and harming Muslims, then that's another thing. At the end of the day, like I said before, I wouldn't advise with it. I would not advise with it. La nansah bihi. I wouldn't advise anyone to join any modern day army of a country, of a specific country. I wouldn't advise with it. And the reason why I didn't say it was haram when I was asked before, and it caused a big, great uproar, Mufti Q&A, so much to the point someone made takfir on me. They said, this guy's a kafir. May Allah bless the person who said that. I mean, and many people were emotional and they were upset. Subhanallah, I've never disliked any video of the Sheikh, but I definitely dislike this one, and he needs to take it back, and this is wrong. This is the tayyib. Jazakallah khairan. May Allah bless all of you. Ala kulli hal, don't think that an army is just a collection of soldiers with guns and tanks. Don't think it's just that simple. Okay? There were some people, such as Van Clausewitz, the great military strategist. He says what? War is a what? A continuation of politics. War is a continuation of politics. Bonaparte, he said, an army marches on its stomach. An army marches on its stomach. Meaning, the army without the nation, the army without the government is what? Is nothing, of no use. And the government without the people and their contribution and their taxes and their service and their loyalty is what? Useless. The government without the people is what? Is of no value. You can't do anything without the people. Everyone understands who fills their coffers, who fights for them, who builds their palaces, except for the what? The people. And the army without the government legitimizing their war, whose banner will they raise, who funds them, who gives them arrows to shoot, and who gives them wood to make their shields out of, who allows them to travel in a boat and conquer a country. The new world, it was conquered under the name and under the banner of a country. This mission or these conquerors or conquistadors, they represent Spain. They represent England. They represent France. They represent Portugal. And that legitimized and gave them the ability to take over and to conquer these people. And if that wasn't the case, they had no right. And that's where we get piracy from. People that were raiding and people that were marauding and stealing and taking and transporting illegal things because they weren't what? Under no official banner. So you can say that it's haram to join the army. You can't join the army. It's supporting the Taghut. You're killing Muslims, so on and so forth. Tayyib. And what also applies to you living in the country of the Taghut and giving your money to the Taghut and paying taxes and registering and being under all other standardized formal practices of the Taghut country. And most importantly, who's the army fighting for? For what way of life? And to protect who and to keep who safe? Except for me and you and our lifestyle. So you gotta stop the hypocrisy and the double standard. Let alone, as some brother said in the comments, well, what about the Muslim countries? Or Middle Eastern countries, Arab countries, whatever you want to call them. I don't want him. We don't get into that right now. In which there are well-known army bases, naval bases, that have been there since the 40s and the 30s and the 60s. And as we said before, one of the beauties of the United States of America, and other countries as well, but I'm talking about my country, is that there's a great deal of transparency. Even though there are things that are hidden and lies and conspiracy, but a lot of it is what? Transparent. You can Google right now as we speak. You can go on right now and type in army bases overseas, naval bases overseas, how many nuclear weapons is, and they will give you what? A great deal of information in the Middle East, in this country, in this Gulf, in this island, in this country. They'll tell you. And they'll tell you how many troops are there, what weapons are there, and the list goes on. So what is the ruling on that country, allowing those kuffar to live in their country and to fly an American flag and to roast a pig with an apple in it in the Khalij, the Gulf? What's the ruling on that? Those bombs are being dropped and their plane is landing back where? In that country. What's the ruling on that? Are they kuffar? So it's haram to join the U.S. Army. You can't do it. A'udhu billah, astaghfirullah. You don't have to pay taxes. It's not the same. Maybe. But now you have to apply it to what? Those other countries that are allowing the kuffar army to reside there. And they are protected. And they say on the news that we are friends with this country. We're what? Friends. Not allies, but we're what? We are friends. They're our friends. They protect us. We protect them. We protect our interests. So, the hypocrisy or the romantic, it's haram to join the army and this and that. We're not with that, no matter what. All right? And oftentimes you may be in a situation in which you may do more harm to a country more than an actual soldier. You may be harming the Muslims with your money or with what you do or what you don't do or say more than a what? More than a soldier that never ever picked up a gun at a Muslim. So it has to be a detail in answering these questions. There has to be some type of detail answering these questions. At the end of the day, I think that I've given the most comprehensive answer, which is to say, I don't advise with it. Included in that is it could be haram. I don't advise you with it. It could be permissible. But you can't go wrong with someone telling you what? I don't think you should do it. Well, how can you go wrong with that? And many of the ulama of Islam, they would answer questions like this. If you read the Masail of Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, okay, he would oftentimes answer a question like this. La urahu. I don't think so. I don't see so. I don't believe so. And he wouldn't always necessarily say it's haram, it's this and it's that. You understand this? فَلِي يعني فِيهِمْ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ وَقُدْوَةٌ طَيِّبَةٌ فِي هَؤُلَاءِ. Answering questions in general, let alone like that, in which you don't always have to say something is or isn't haram, let alone a question or the answer may be dangerous. And it may need more time to think. Maybe I need more time to think on the answer. I don't know everything. Everyone understand this? Or I could give you a comprehensive answer. I wouldn't advise you to do it. And a smart person picks up on what? Hints. Wallahu a'lam.
Initials OS from Colombia, MO. If a person is still learning the basics of the religion, should they work at an Islamic school that they might not be on the Sunnah? Should they work at an Islamic school that may not be on the Sunnah, or a non-Muslim school? Can you give advice for working at either of the schools on avoiding things that may be impermissible and how to advise when you are still learning?
Question comes from Missouri. If a person is learning the basics of Islam, they're not that strong, they're still learning and finding their proper way, should they work at a school that's not on the Sunnah or a school of non-Muslims? What advice would you give them concerning advising them, etc.? Don't work at those schools. If you're a beginner and you're just starting off, no matter what you're doing, don't work at any school unless it's 101% on the Sunnah and 101% on Islam. That's my advice. Next question.
Initials SS from Hyderabad, India. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Can you please explain the act of reciting Quran for the dead and the correct opinion regarding it?
Question once more comes from Hyderabad, India. Could you please explain the proper way of reciting Quran for the dead and the correct or the strongest opinion concerning that? We have an issue, and that is donating good deeds to dead people, or doing things on the behalf of dead people, or helping out dead people with something that we do for ourselves, something that they benefit from and feel some type of warmth or comfort from, such as giving sadaqah. I give you $100, I pay $1,000 to an orphanage, not for my own self, but with the intention of my dead uncle. Or I pray all night long, making dua to Allah to forgive my dead uncle. Me standing or sitting in prayer, holding my hands up, that's effort, that's energy, that's a great amount of sacrifice. And I'm not doing it for myself, but I'm asking Allah for my uncle. I could spend that time making dua for myself, what I'm asking for my uncle, or making hajj on my deceased uncle's behalf, or umrah on his behalf. Nah, that's one thing. Or is it permissible for me to read the Quran and read an entire juz and say I give my rewards to the Prophet? I make this hajj on behalf of the Prophet of Islam. I make, and even though he made hajj already, but I'm doing an extra hajj for him. Or I'm going to give this sadaqah, I'm going to slaughter this animal in the name of Allah, for Allah. It's not shirk. But the food, the bank will be on behalf of this dead Muslim. Is that permissible? Or is it restricted to what I just mentioned of prayer, sadaqah, and dua, and the mandatory hajj and umrah, things like this? Alright? Certain types of fasting. Alright? With regards to another, a person owed fasting. Different details with regards to the hadith, man mata wa alayhi siyamun sama anhu waliyuhu. Alright? Al-Muhim is that one group of ulama, they say, is that donating deeds to the deceased is restricted. Is restricted to that which has been mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah. And that which has been mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah are the things I just explained. Making dua for them. Giving sadaqah on their behalf. Making obligatory hajj or umrah on their behalf. And certain types of fasting that were still on them when they died. Are we understand this? Am I clear on this or not? And that's what? That's it. And others, they say rather anything that you do of good can be for a deceased Muslim. Anything you do of good for them. So the ulama of Islam, they differ on this issue. There is no doubt the safest thing to do is to stick with that which is textual. Al-Mansus alayh. Is that which is mentioned in the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's the first group of ulama. The sadaqah, the obligatory hajj, certain types of fasting, right? And things like this. But to just open it up and you can do anything for a dead Muslim, even though many ulama, they take that view, I would say stick with the first view. Stick with the first view. And there are many reasons why you should stick with the first view. As far as reciting the Quran to the dead, didn't the Prophet do it? Did the Sahaba do it? One may say that the dead person, he can benefit from it. The hadith clearly states that when the people walk away from the graveyard, they can hear the footsteps. A person hears the footsteps. And there's some I thought of many of the Salaf, Ibn Rajab and others, they've quoted of some of the benefits that some Muslims get in their graves from those who visit them. Going to them, making dua for them, to Allah, for them. And someone who's righteous, who cares about them, and are they doing well in their graves, and things like this. But does that mean that I'm going to now recite the Quran to the dead with the intention of him hearing it? Do the dead hear? The ulama, they differ over that. Can the dead hear the living people or not? They differ on that issue. But it wasn't something which was known and practiced to the Sahaba on a large scale, in which Abu Bakr as-Siddiq will go to the Prophet's grave and recite the Quran, or Umar radiallahu anhu will recite the Quran. Do we have that information? If we do, then perhaps. And if we don't, then the lies no best. The best thing is to stay away from it. Just like the hadith about splitting the twig over the two graves. The Prophet ﷺ, he took it and he split it in half. Not a twig, it was actually fresh from the date palm stalk. فَشَقَّهُ شِقَيْنِ. He broke it in half. فَغَرَزَ فِي كُلِّ وَاحِدٍ. And he placed half of it in each grave. And they asked him why, and he says, لَعَلَّهُ يُخَفَّفُ عَنْهُمَا مَا لَمْ يَيْبَسَ. He says, perhaps that Allah will protect him from the punishment of the grave as long as it remains green. As long as it remains green. So the hadith is in Sahihain that the Prophet, he did this for the deceased people. So does it mean that I can now go to a graveyard and take a date palm stalk and stick it into the grave as a means of asking Allah to protect him from adhab al-qabr? Some of the ulama of Islam have the opinion that you should do that and you can do that. But did the Sahaba do it as a whole? Was it a well-known practice as a whole? Obviously, we know the answer is no. So therefore, you shouldn't do it. You should not do it. So therefore, reading the Quran on the dead, to the dead, for the dead, should be avoided. It's best not to do it. Bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as the hadith that says, Iqra'u ala mawtakum yasin, read Surah Yasin to those who are dead, then there's a long discussion regarding that hadith. The first point, obviously, is that the hadith is not authentic. Al-qawl al-rajih al-sahih. The correct view is that the hadith is not authentic. That's number one. Number two is that, does that hadith mean those who are dead? Or does that hadith mean those who are living and they're about to die? someone on their deathbed. Like the hadith that says, لَقِنُوا مَوْتَاكُمْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Hadith says, teach those who are dying to say La ilaha illallah. But the hadith doesn't say dying. The hadith says, لَقِنُوا مَوْتَاكُمْ. Those who are actually what? Dead. And the interpretation of the hadith is those who are what? On the deathbed. So what does a dead person benefit from me saying, say La ilaha illallah? And what does the dead person benefit from Yasin? And he's dead. Or is it a benefit from Surah Yasin when they're what? About to die. So therefore, there are many different ins and outs and many different loopholes in the argument of those who say that you should recite the Quran for the dead and to the dead. So therefore, it should be avoided. And some of it could be permissible, but it's best to avoid. And obviously, some of it is clear bid'ah. It's clear bid'ah. And some of it may be shirk and kufr. If you have the intention of giving the good deeds or doing the good deeds for the person in the grave. And we know that the ulama of Islam, they say that there's a conveyor belt. There's a system, there's a process. That something starts off as, it's possible, muhtamal. And then the next thing you know, it becomes mukhalafa. Something that's not necessarily a bid'ah, but it's not from the sunnah. And then the third step is that thing becomes what? A bid'ah. And then the final step, or after that, it becomes what? Shirk. It starts off slaughtering for Allah at the grave. For Allah at the grave. And then as time goes on, and ignorance prevails, and the people become more and more laxed, I'm now slaughtering for the grave. For the person in the grave, and I'm no longer slaughtering for Allah. So be mindful. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He clearly mentions that. إِنَّمَا اسْتَزَلَّهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ. He says that indeed the shaitan has istazallahum. He caused them to slip. Shaitan can make you what? Slip. So be mindful of that. So it should be avoided. Reciting the Quran for the dead to the dead should be avoided. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. Make dua for them. Pray for them. Give charity on their behalf. That's more than enough to keep you busy. Bidnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And most importantly, if that person was righteous, and if they were pious, and they taught you the Quran, or influenced you to recite the Quran, then you reciting the Quran for yourself, bidnillah ta'ala, they'll get some of it. They'll get some of it. Inshallah. And Allah knows best.
And this was AS from British Columbia, Canada. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I know in Islam it's not permissible. I know in Islam it is not impermissible for a sister to approach a brother for marriage. But would you recommend this through another person?
Sorry, question comes from British Columbia, Canada. I know in Islam that it isn't impermissible for a sister to approach her brother, so on and so forth. The first rule of HadithDisciple is to do what? Empty your cup. I know it isn't and isn't. It's not the way that you should answer a question. It's not the way you should ask a question. Okay? That's first and foremost. Jazakallah khairan. Al-Muhim, every situation is different. Alright? Sometimes the direct contact isn't best. There may be a brother who's very shy. He may be turned off if the sister walks up to him directly. Some brothers are scared of marriage. Seriously. It's a reality. Some brothers are like allergic. Like, the thought of marrying a woman is like scary. Allahul musta'an, yani. They may laugh and giggle like that. It's a reality. Malish, yani. This is real. So there may be some brothers in which it's not a good idea to do what? Approach directly. And it's best to send a third person, another sister or something like this, a family member. And some brothers, they don't mind. Some brothers, they may be offended if you send someone else. Or it may be confusing, or you may have a bad messenger. It's a reality. You may have a bad spy. It's real. The person may be jealous. You send a sister or a brother or whatever, and he's not married himself, or she's not married herself. And she will mess it up. I don't understand this. You told her, go tell brother Fulan that I want to marry him, the sister with the pink himar. She goes and says, it's a sister that like you. And he's like, I don't want no sister to like me. But if he knew that it was sister Fulan with the pink himar on, what? He wouldn't what? He wouldn't refuse. Sister Fulan with the pink himar, really, really beautiful and pretty. As an example. As a what? Don't act like you don't got them in your MSA and at college. Keep it real, right? I mean, keep it real. Let's be realistic now. So, yani, every situation is different. There is no one way of doing it. As long as it isn't haram, as long as it's not against the Quran and the Sunnah, then there are different ways. You have to scope it out yourself. Some people go directly. Some people play hard to get. Some people are shy. Some people are embarrassed. Nah? Some people, they have a cultural taboo. You can't ask the man directly for his daughter. You have to ask another person. He asks him, Shafa yani. Wasita. Okay, so every situation is different. Al-Muhim ista'in billah. Seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. Ask Allah to guide you. And at the end of the day, you won't know until you try. You won't know what? Until you try. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Mubarak. Ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabina Muhammad. Jazakumullahu khairan.